The folded flag was already on Nathan Reeves's casket when Scout tore free of Joe Garrett's hand and ran. Almost 200 people watched the yellow Labrador hit the polished oak with both front paws, scramble up and lower his chin onto the flag as if he had done it 1,000 times before. A man in the third row said, loud enough to carry, that someone needed to get the dog off the casket before things got worse. Dorothy Reeves did not move. She was the only one who understood, and even she did not understand all of it, not yet. Before we go on, comment down below what part of the world you're listening from, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories like this one. The wind moved through the tall grass at the edge of Heron Falls Memorial Cemetery, and for a long moment, no other sound broke it. Pastor Glenn Atchley stood with the open Bible pressed against his chest, watching the dog. The two soldiers from the honor guard, still in dress blues, had already stepped forward. One of them looked at Dorothy for a signal. Joe Garrett stood in place with the empty leash swinging from his fist, his mouth slightly open as if he were trying to remember how a leash usually worked. Nathan's cousin Marilyn, in the second row, made a small choked sound and buried her face in her husband's shoulder. Dorothy stood up from her folding chair. She was a small woman, 62 years old, in a plain black dress her sister had ironed for her the night before. She walked across the strip of trampled grass between the front row and the casket, and she knelt down beside it. She put her hand on Scout's side. She could feel his ribs rising and falling, quick and shallow, the way an animal breathes when it is trying not to show that it is afraid. Scout did not look at her. He kept his eyes half closed and his chin pressed into the flag, and Dorothy understood, in a way she had not understood through the whole terrible week of officers at the door and phone calls in the middle of the night, and forms she could not read through her tears, that she was not the only one grieving her son. She turned her head toward Pastor Glenn and gave a small nod. He nodded back at the honor guard. The soldiers stepped away. Scout stayed on the casket through the rest of the service. Pastor Glenn spoke of duty. He spoke of a boy who used to sit in the front pew with his mother and pass her a peppermint during the sermon. He spoke of the man that boy had become. He read the 23rd Psalm, and his voice broke on the line about the valley of the shadow of death, because he had baptized Nathan Reeves on a Sunday afternoon 28 years ago, and there had been a photograph of it on his kitchen wall ever since. When the honor guard folded the flag into its neat, tight triangle and placed it into Dorothy's hands, Scout climbed down off the casket on his own. He did not need to be told. He sat at Dorothy's feet and looked up at her, and his tail thumped once, softly, against the grass. Someone in the crowd, a woman Dorothy did not know, began to cry so hard she had to be led out through the iron gate by two of Nathan's high school friends. 21 shots split the gray air. Later at the graveside, Dorothy stood with the triangle of the flag pressed against her stomach and watched them lower her son into the ground. Scout sat beside her the entire time. He did not pull. He did not wander. When it was done and the crowd began to move back toward their cars, he stood up, waited for her to turn, and walked back to the parking lot at her heel as if he had been doing it his whole life. Joe Garrett caught up with her at the tailgate of her old blue Buick. He was a heavy man with tired eyes and hands that had held 2 babies and a rifle and a coffin cord, and he did not know how to look at her. He kept trying to look at her and then looking at the ground. "Dorothy," he said, "about the dog. If it's too much, I can take him back to my place. Sheila already said. She said it's fine." Dorothy shook her head. She reached down and rested her palm on the top of Scout's head. His fur was warm from the sun that had finally broken through the clouds. "He belongs at home," she said. "He belongs where Nathan grew up." Joe swallowed. He looked as if he wanted to say something else, and then he did not say it. He nodded, hugged her tightly for a long second, and walked back toward his truck. Dorothy watched him go. Something in the way he had not finished his sentence stayed with her for the rest of the day, and for the rest of the week, and for longer than that. She loaded Scout into the back seat. The drive from the cemetery back to the house on Caldwell Street took 11 minutes. In that time, Scout did not put his head down. He sat upright in the middle of the seat and watched the town roll past the window, as if he were checking every corner for something he had lost. The house on Caldwell Street was a small yellow one with a slouching front porch and a screen door that Nathan had promised to fix the last time he came home on leave. Dorothy unlocked the front door and Scout walked in ahead of her. He walked straight down the hallway, past the living room and the kitchen and the bathroom, and pushed open the door of Nathan's old bedroom with his nose. He lay down at the foot of the bed and did not move. Dorothy stood in the doorway for a long time. The room smelled of dust and cedar, and faintly of the deodorant Nathan had used since he was 15. His track trophies were still on the shelf. His high school yearbook was still on the dresser. His army recruitment brochure was still tacked to the corkboard, edges curled from the years, dated the month before his 20th birthday. She had left the room the way it had been so that when he came home, it would feel like coming home. Now she wondered what she was supposed to do with it. She sat down on the floor in the doorway. She watched Scout breathe. She fell asleep like that, sitting up, with the folded flag still in her lap. The next morning, Scout would not eat. Dorothy filled the metal bowl in the kitchen with the same kibble Joe had said he liked. She set it down. Scout came out of the bedroom, walked to the bowl, sniffed once, and walked back down the hall to Nathan's room. She tried again at lunchtime. He did the same thing. She tried a piece of chicken from her own plate at dinner. Scout looked at her, and she was sure he understood what she was offering, but he turned his head away and lay back down. On the third day, she called the vet in town, Dr. Petra Wallace, who had known the family since Nathan was in elementary school. "Is he drinking water at least?" Petra asked. "He drinks, just a little. He goes outside when I take him. But he won't eat, Petra. It's been 3 days." Petra was quiet for a moment. "Dorothy," she said, "I've seen this before with dogs that lose their person. Sometimes they'll go a week, sometimes longer. Sometimes they'll never come back to themselves. What you're going to have to do is sit with him, bring the bowl into that room, let him eat where he feels safe, and don't be surprised if he doesn't, just be there." Dorothy carried the bowl into Nathan's room and set it down beside the bed. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall. She talked to Scout in a low, easy voice, the way she used to talk to Nathan when he was small and sick. She told him about the summer Nathan turned 9 and caught his first bass out at Miller's Pond and refused to eat anything but that fish for 3 straight nights. She told him about the winter Nathan came home from basic training and slept for 18 hours straight in that same bed. She told him things she had never told anyone because there had been no one to tell them to. Scout listened. His eyes stayed on her the whole time, but he did not eat. On the 5th day, he ate 3 pieces of kibble from her hand. On the 7th, he ate half the bowl. On the 9th, he ate all of it, standing up in the kitchen like a normal dog. Dorothy sat down on the linoleum floor and cried for 20 minutes straight. And Scout came over and pressed the whole side of his body against her, and she cried a little harder, because it was the first time since the officers had come to her door that she had felt anything close to comfort. That night she began to notice the other thing. Scout would eat in the kitchen, he would drink in the kitchen, he would go out into the backyard when she opened the door, but he would not, under any circumstance, stop looking for something in Nathan's bedroom. He walked the perimeter of that room 10, 12, 15 times a day. He sniffed the baseboard. He nosed at the closet door until she opened it, and then he stood there staring at the row of Nathan's old shirts and jackets, most of which had not been touched in years. He climbed onto the bed and pushed his face into the pillow until Dorothy had to lift him off, and even then he sat beside the bed and stared at it, as if the bed itself had done something wrong. On the 10th day, Joe came by after work with a plastic bag of dog toys he had brought from his place. "He never really played with any of these," Joe said, But I thought maybe, you know. Dorothy took the bag. She poured coffee. They sat at the kitchen table where she and Nathan's father had sat for years, before Nathan's father had died, and then, later, before Nathan had grown up and left. "Joe," she said. He looked at her. "When you were about to say something at the cemetery," she said, "and you didn't. What was it?" Joe put his coffee down. He looked at the tablecloth. It was the same yellow tablecloth she had used since Nathan was in middle school. "Dorothy," he said, "I promised him I wouldn't. He is gone, Joe." Joe closed his eyes. His face was the face of a man who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time and had finally been given permission to set it down, only to discover that setting it down was not the relief he had hoped for. "I promised him," Joe said again, more quietly. Scout, who had been lying under the table with his chin across Dorothy's shoe, lifted his head. He looked at Joe. He looked at Dorothy. Then he stood up and walked out of the kitchen and down the hall, and Dorothy and Joe both heard him push open the bedroom door. They sat in silence. After a long minute, Dorothy said, "There is something in that room. He knows there is." Joe said nothing. "Joe, what is in that room?" Joe rubbed his hand across his mouth. He looked out the kitchen window at the maple tree in the backyard, where he and Nathan had built a fort out of scrap plywood in the summer of '98. "Look under his mattress," he said finally. "That's all I'm going to say. Look under his mattress, and after that you come to me and you ask me whatever you want, and I will answer." Dorothy stood up. Her hands were shaking. She was not sure why they were shaking. Joe caught her wrist gently as she passed him. "Dorothy," he said, "I'm sorry. I have wanted to tell you for 2 years." She did not answer. She walked down the hall. Scout was sitting on the floor next to Nathan's bed, and when Dorothy walked in, he stood up and moved aside. He knew, somehow, in whatever way a dog knows anything, he knew. Dorothy pulled back the corner of the quilt. She lifted the pillow off the bed. She slid her hand under the mattress and felt, near the head of the bed, the edge of something flat and hard. She pulled it out. It was a small wooden box, the size of a paperback novel, made of a dark wood she thought might be walnut. Nathan had brought it back from the woodshop class he had taken in his junior year of high school. She remembered him showing it to her the day he brought it home, proud of the way he had sanded the joints. She had not seen it in years. She sat down on the edge of the bed. She opened the box. Inside, there was a bundle of letters tied with a thin brown ribbon. There was a photograph, folded in half, its corners worn soft. There was a small pink hair ribbon, the kind a little girl might wear. And there was a receipt from a jewelry store in the next county dated 3 years ago for the sale of a diamond ring. Dorothy's throat closed. She unfolded the photograph first. It showed Nathan on the front porch of a house she did not recognize, sitting on the top step. Beside him was a young woman with brown hair pulled back into a loose bun, laughing at something out of frame. On the young woman's lap was a little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with the same brown hair and enormous, serious eyes. The little girl had one hand tangled in the fur at the back of the neck of a yellow Labrador puppy, and the puppy was licking her ear. The puppy was Scout. Even at that age, Dorothy could tell. She had watched Scout grow from a bundle small enough to fit in a shoebox into the big animal now sitting beside her feet. Scout looked up at her, and Dorothy suddenly, painfully understood that he was not looking at the photograph. He was looking at her face. He was watching to see what she would do. She untied the ribbon on the letters. There were 11 of them, all in Nathan's handwriting, none of them addressed, all of them beginning with the same word. M. I am writing this in the barracks because I cannot sleep. There is a thing about the desert that is impossible to describe to anyone who has not seen it. It is like being at the bottom of the ocean without water. I keep thinking about the porch and Lily and the way you laughed at me for the way I flipped the pancakes. I keep thinking about the way it should have been. They lost my mail this week. I know you cannot read this. I know none of it will ever reach you, but writing it feels like the only place I still get to talk to you. I know I promised you I would take care of her. I need you to know I meant it. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, whatever it looks like when this is over. I gave you my word, and I am not the kind of man who breaks it. Dorothy read all 11 letters. She read them slowly. She read them twice. She was crying so hard by the end of the second reading that her tears were falling on the page and blurring the ink, and she had to hold the letters away from her face so she would not ruin them. When she was done, she sat there for a long time. Scout put his head in her lap. She stroked his ear absently. She looked at the photograph again. She looked at the little girl with the enormous, serious eyes. Then she stood up, wiped her face on the back of her sleeve, and walked back into the kitchen. Joe was still at the table. He had not touched his coffee. Dorothy sat down across from him. She set the photograph on the table between them. "Tell me," she said. Joe told her. He told her about a woman named Emily Hartwell. He told her that Emily had been 26 years old when Nathan met her, and that she had been working as a waitress at a diner just outside of town, and that Nathan had gone in one Tuesday for pie and had come out engaged, more or less, though it took them another 8 months to make it official. He told her that Emily had a daughter, Lily, whose father had never been in the picture, and that Nathan had loved that little girl from the first evening he met her, when she had spilled apple juice all down the front of his shirt and had cried, and Nathan had scooped her up and told her it was the best thing that had happened to that shirt. He told her that Emily had been sensitive about meeting Nathan's mother. "She was scared, Dorothy," Joe said. "She thought you'd think she was after him for the wrong reasons. She wasn't. She was as sweet a girl as I ever met. And Lily is a little wonder. But Emily wanted to wait. She wanted to wait until Nathan was back from the deployment and things were settled. He was going to ask you to come out for a Sunday dinner in September. He had it planned." "He deployed in July," Dorothy said. Her voice did not sound like her own voice. Joe nodded. "He deployed in July," he said. 2 weeks before, on a Saturday morning, Emily was driving out to the base to meet him for lunch. There was a truck coming the other way that ran a stop sign. She died in the ambulance. Dorothy pressed her hand to her mouth. 2 weeks before he deployed. Yes, and he did not tell me. He said, and I quote, that he was not going to give his mother a heart attack right before he had to ship out for a year. He said when he got back, he would tell you everything. He'd bring Lily to your house himself. That was what he was planning. And the girl, Lily. Where is she, Joe? Where is she right now? Joe took a slow breath. Emily's aunt has her, he said. A woman named Constance Hartwell. She lives in Ridgewood over by the highway. She has had Lily since Emily died. She agreed to keep her while Nathan was overseas. And now? Now Nathan is gone, Joe said very quietly, and I do not know what she is going to do. Scout, at Dorothy's feet, made a small sound that was not quite a whine. Dorothy looked down at him. She looked at the photograph on the table. She looked at Joe. Scout was hers, wasn't he? She said. The puppy. He was Lily's, Joe said. Emily bought him for Lily on her 5th birthday from a farmer out on Route 11. Nathan kept him at his place after Emily died because Constance did not want a dog in her apartment. That's why you two ended up with him. That's why he acted like he did today at the cemetery. He remembers all of them. He remembers everything. Dorothy nodded slowly. She was not crying anymore. She had cried herself out, at least for that hour. She felt something else now, a hard, level clarity in her chest that she had not felt in weeks. She stood up. She picked up the photograph. Joe, she said, I need the address in Ridgewood. Joe pulled a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket. He had been carrying it, Dorothy realized, since the funeral. He had been carrying it, maybe, for years. I hoped you would ask, he said. Ridgewood was 40 minutes east on a two-lane county road that wound through cornfields and past a river that turned the color of steel in the afternoon light. Dorothy drove with Scout in the back seat and Nathan's photograph on the passenger side, weighted down by an unopened envelope of insurance paperwork so it would not slide off the vinyl. Constance Hartwell lived in the upstairs unit of a small brick duplex on a street called Meridian. The lawn had not been mowed in a while. There was a rusted tricycle turned on its side by the front steps. The paint on the door was peeling. Dorothy knocked. She heard footsteps. The door opened. The woman who stood in the doorway was perhaps in her mid-50s, thin and stiff, with hair the color of iron pulled back so tightly that it made the skin around her eyes stretch. She wore a grey cardigan over a blouse and a wooden crucifix on a leather cord. She looked at Dorothy the way a person looks at a stranger asking for directions to a place that person has never heard of. "Yes," she said. "Miss Hartwell," Dorothy said. "My name is Dorothy Reeves. I am Nathan Reeves's mother." Something moved behind the woman's eyes, just a flicker. Then it was gone. "I see," Constance said. She did not move. She did not open the door any wider. "I would like to speak with you," Dorothy said. "About Lily." Constance's mouth tightened. "I did not think you knew about Lily." "I did not," Dorothy said. "Not until yesterday." Constance considered her for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. The apartment was clean but very bare. There was a green couch with a plastic cover over it. There was a coffee table with a Bible and a small ceramic angel arranged in careful symmetry. There was a small television in an oak cabinet. There were no photographs on the walls. There were no toys anywhere Dorothy could see. Constance did not invite her to sit down. Dorothy stood in the middle of the living room with Scout at her side. Scout, who had been quiet on the drive, lifted his nose slightly and turned his head toward a closed door at the end of the short hallway. "You brought a dog into my home," Constance said. "You did not think to ask." "I am sorry," Dorothy said. "I brought him because..." Before she could finish, the closed door at the end of the hallway opened. A little girl stepped out. She was maybe 7 years old now. She was very small for her age, in a plain pink shirt and jeans that had been rolled up twice at the ankles. Her brown hair was pulled back the same way her mother's had been in the photograph. She held a stuffed rabbit under one arm. She had enormous, serious eyes. She saw Scout. Scout saw her. Every part of Scout that had been quiet and grieving and half asleep for 2 weeks lit up at once. His tail did not just wag. It hit the leg of the coffee table in 3 sharp beats. He crossed the room in a single bound and threw the whole weight of his body against the little girl's legs, his nose pressing into her stomach, his tail thumping the wall so hard that the little ceramic angel on the coffee table wobbled. Lily dropped the rabbit. She fell to her knees. She wrapped both arms around Scout's neck and pressed her face into his fur, and she made a sound. Not a word, not a cry, just a low, hurt, joyful sound that Dorothy would remember for the rest of her life. "Scout," Lily whispered. "Scout, Scout, Scout." Constance stood very still in the middle of the room. Her mouth was a thin line. She did not go to the little girl. She did not say anything. Dorothy walked to Lily and knelt in the carpet beside her. Scout did not move away. Lily did not let go of him. Dorothy waited until the little girl's breathing evened out. Then she said, very softly, "Hi, honey. My name is Dorothy. I was Nathan's mama." Lily's head came up out of Scout's fur. Her enormous, serious eyes fixed on Dorothy's face. "Nathan is not coming back," she said. "Not a question, a fact." "No, honey, he is not." Lily nodded once, gravely, as if she had already known and was just having it confirmed. "He said he would come back," she said. "He promised. I know he did. He said we would live in a house with a yard, and Scout would live there too. I know he did, sweetheart. But he didn't come back. No. Lily thought about that. Her small hand tightened in Scout's fur. Are you sad? She said. Yes, Dorothy said. I am very sad. So am I. They looked at each other for a long moment, an old woman and a little girl on the carpet of a stranger's living room, and something passed between them that Dorothy could not have put into words if she had tried for a year. Behind them, Constance cleared her throat. Lily, she said, you need to go back to your room. This is grown-up business. Lily did not move. She looked at Scout. Scout leaned against her. May I take him with me? Lily asked. Her voice was polite, the polite of a child who had learned very early that it was safer to be polite. Constance's mouth tightened again. Fine, she said, but the dog does not get on the bed, and you do not slam the door. Yes, ma'am. Lily stood up carefully. She looked at Dorothy. Come with me, she said. Dorothy looked at Constance. Constance did not object. Dorothy stood up. Lily led her down the short hallway. Scout walked between them. Lily's room was small. It had a single bed with a plain white blanket, a small dresser, and one bookshelf with 3 books on it. There were no toys visible other than the stuffed rabbit she had dropped in the living room. There was one picture on the wall, a printed sheet of paper tacked up with pushpins, that said, in a child's uneven handwriting, "This is my mama and me." Underneath was a drawing in crayon of 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one short. Lily sat down on the bed. Scout jumped up and curled up beside her without waiting to be invited. Lily did not correct him. Aunt Constance says the dog does not get on the bed, Lily said softly. He's not on my bed at home either, Dorothy said, but I think for today we can make an exception. Lily thought about that. Then she smiled, the smallest possible smile. Scout is soft, she said. He is. He smells like Nathan's kitchen. Dorothy sat down on the corner of the bed, very carefully, so as not to crowd them. Honey, she said, can you tell me about Nathan? Whatever you want, whatever you remember, I would like to know. Lily's face changed. She looked younger and older at the same time. He came on Wednesdays, she said. He brought me pancakes from the diner because they were my mama's favorite. He read me a book about a mouse who wanted to be a lion. He said when he came home from the army, he was going to be my dad. He said I could call him whatever I wanted. I called him Nathan because that was his name. Did you like that? I liked when he called me Lil, because my mama called me Lil. Nobody else calls you Lil. Lily shook her head. Aunt Constance calls me Lillian. She says that is my proper name, but my mama did not call me Lillian. Dorothy nodded slowly. She looked at the drawing on the wall. She looked at the little girl on the bed. She looked at Scout, who had put his head across Lily's lap and closed his eyes, and was breathing in the deep, easy way of a dog who has finally found the place he was always looking for. She stood up. I will be back, she said quietly. I need to talk to your aunt now, but I am going to come back very soon, all right? Lily nodded. Will Scout come back too? Dorothy hesitated. Then she said, yes, Scout will come too. Constance was standing at the kitchen counter when Dorothy came back into the living room. She had made a pot of tea. She did not pour any of it for Dorothy. Miss Hartwell, Dorothy began. Constance is fine. Constance, may I ask what is going to happen to Lily? Constance did not turn around. She kept her back to Dorothy for a long moment. Then she said in a voice as flat as a level, I have already signed the paperwork. On Monday, a social worker is coming to take her. Dorothy's stomach dropped. Take her where? To an emergency placement, then to a foster family. I do not know the family. I have not asked. Constance, I did what I could. Constance turned finally, and her face was harder than any face Dorothy had seen in a long time. "I took her when Emily, when the accident happened. I took her because there was nobody else. Nathan was leaving. He said he would send money. He did send money every month without missing once. But money does not raise a child, Mrs. Reeves, and I am not the person for this. I never wanted to be the person for this. I am too old and too tired I'm not that person. She is your niece. She is a stranger to me. She is a good child, but she is a stranger. And now Nathan is dead." Dorothy took a breath. "I would like to take her," she said. Constance looked at her. "You," she said. "You who did not even know she existed until yesterday." "Yes. You are her father's mother, in quotation marks, because he never actually became her father. He never signed anything. He was going to. He didn't." "That is not legally," Constance said. "You are nothing to her. You are a nice old woman from a town 40 minutes away with no connection to my niece at all, except that your son was engaged to my sister-in-law's daughter, and the engagement was informal, and the wedding never happened, and now they are all dead." "Constance, please." Constance closed her eyes. "Mrs. Reeves," she said, "I am tired. My sister is dead. My niece is dead. Now the man who was supposed to be that child's father is dead. I have signed the paperwork with the state because the state, unlike me, has the resources to raise her properly. That is the best thing I can do for her. Please leave, Constance. Please leave." Dorothy left. She sat in the driver's seat of the Buick for a long time before she turned the key. Scout, in the back seat, kept looking out the window at the door of the brick duplex, waiting. That night, back on Caldwell Street, Dorothy sat at the kitchen table and did not touch her dinner. Scout lay under the table with his chin on her shoe. She looked at the yellow tablecloth. She looked at the photograph she had brought back inside from the car. She looked at the folded flag on the top shelf of the cabinet. Then she got up and called Joe Garrett. Joe drove over in 20 minutes. He had a lawyer, he said, somebody he had used when he had the trouble with the second mortgage a few years back. A good man. His name was Elias Marsh, and he had an office on 3rd Street, and he would see Dorothy first thing in the morning. Elias Marsh was a small, precise man in his 60s, with a bow tie and a fountain pen. He listened to Dorothy for 40 minutes without interrupting. When she was done, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Mrs. Reeves," he said, "I have to be straight with you. Legally you are, as Miss Hartwell told you, essentially nothing to that child. Nathan did not marry the mother. He did not adopt the child. In the eyes of the state, he was a friend of the family, nothing more." "He was going to adopt her," Dorothy said. "There were papers. There had to have been." "He may have started paperwork. He may not have finished it. Even if he did, it would not have been fully executed prior to his death. So we have nothing." "I would not say nothing." Elias put his glasses back on. "The state, in a case like this, does consider what is best for the child. A stable home, a caring family, a history of relationship. A child's own preference, if the child is old enough to express one, and I would say 7 is right at that edge. But we are asking the state to place a child with someone who has never met her until this week, and against the express wishes of her current guardian. Constance does not want her. Constance is legally her guardian and has legally consented to state placement. The state will move quickly. That is how these things work." "How quickly?" "You said Monday for the pickup. It is Wednesday now. That gives us 5 days." Dorothy pressed her palm against her forehead. "What can we do?" "We can file for an emergency guardianship petition tomorrow morning. We can request an expedited hearing. We can gather everything that shows Nathan's intentions, every letter, every receipt, every check he sent, every witness who can testify to the plan. We can subpoena Miss Hartwell to testify at the hearing about the actual condition of the child in her care." Yes. We can also, and I want you to think about this carefully, request that Scout be permitted to be present at the hearing. Dorothy blinked. The dog. Judges in family court are people, Mrs. Reeves. They rule on the letter of the law. But they are people. If the judge sees what I've seen you describe, that dog with that child, it is not nothing. It is not everything, but it is not nothing. All right. I will need every letter, every scrap, everything Nathan ever wrote about that child, everything Joe Garrett knows and can swear to, everything you have. You will have it. And Mrs. Reeves, I need you to prepare yourself, because there is a good chance we will not win this. Dorothy nodded. She stood up. We will do our best, she said. We will, said Elias Marsh. The next 3 days were a blur. Dorothy tore Nathan's room apart gently, piece by piece, and found more than she had ever expected. She found a folder in the bottom of his footlocker labeled, in Nathan's blocky print, Lily. Inside were photocopies of the adoption paperwork he had begun 3 months before deployment. She found bank statements showing an automatic transfer of $600 a month to a savings account in Lily's name that Constance had apparently never touched. She had lived all this time only on the money Nathan had personally handed over on visits. She found a life insurance policy naming Lily as the sole beneficiary. She found, tucked into the back of Nathan's Bible, a folded note in Emily's handwriting. Nathan, if you are reading this, it means the worst has happened. Please take care of her. She is my whole world. I know you love her. I know you will love her more. I love you. Emily. Dorothy sat on the edge of Nathan's bed with that note in her lap and did not move for a long time. Joe gave a written statement. So did Petra Wallace, the vet, who had actually met Emily and Lily once when Scout had needed a shot early on. So did the woman who owned the diner where Emily had worked, who had known Nathan for 2 years and could speak to his devotion to the mother and the child. Elias filed the emergency petition on Friday morning. The hearing was set for the following Wednesday. On Sunday, Dorothy drove out to Ridgewood again. She had called ahead. Constance had agreed coldly to let her visit for 1 hour. Lily was in the same pink shirt. Scout ran to her the same way. Lily hugged him with the same wordless fierceness. But this time, when Dorothy sat with her on the bed, Lily leaned against her and did not move away. Aunt Constance says a lady is coming tomorrow to take me somewhere, Lily said very quietly. I know she does. I do not want to go. I know you do not. Will Scout come? Dorothy paused. She looked at the little girl. She thought about lying. I do not know yet, honey. I'm trying to make it so that Scout and I both come and get you instead. But I am not sure I can. There is a judge I have to talk to. Why a judge? Because grown-ups need permission from a judge for things like this. Lily thought about that. If the judge does not say yes, will I still get to see Scout? I will try. I will really try. Lily nodded. Tell Scout I love him, even if the judge says no. Dorothy pressed her forehead against the top of Lily's head. She could not speak for a moment. I will tell him, she said, but you will get to tell him yourself. On Wednesday. He will be right there. Lily's small hand slid into hers, The next morning, Monday, the social worker came for Lily as scheduled. Elias had already filed an emergency stay. It took 2 phone calls and 40 minutes of standing in Constance's living room, but the social worker eventually agreed that no removal would take place before the Wednesday hearing. Lily would stay with Constance until then. Constance was not happy. Constance was, in fact, coldly furious. She did not speak to Dorothy for the entire 40 minutes. She held her wooden crucifix in one hand the whole time. That night, Joe called Dorothy. I need you to sit down, he said. I am sitting. Nathan had a brother. Dorothy blinked. Nathan does not have a brother. Nathan has. Nathan had a half-brother on his father's side, from before you and Cliff were married. A man named Wesley Reeves lives in Charlotte. Dorothy sat very still. Cliff never told me about a son. Nathan told me about him once, years ago. Cliff apparently told Nathan when Nathan turned 18. Nathan did not want to upset you. Wesley reached out to him a couple of times. They met for coffee once when Nathan was in Charlotte on a base transfer, but they never really got close. Wesley is. Nathan said Wesley is a difficult man. Joe, why are you telling me this now? Because Elias just called me. Wesley Reeves has filed his own petition. He is claiming next of kin rights to Nathan's estate. All of it. The house, the insurance, the savings account for Lily. Everything. Dorothy stood up very slowly. He cannot do that. He can try. He is Nathan's blood relative. He is claiming that you are not on the deed to this house. Only Cliff and Nathan were. Elias says that is technically true. Cliff left it to Nathan. Nathan died without a will. But the house was ours. Cliff and I bought it together in 1979. Cliff put it in his name only, to protect it from a lawsuit his construction company was dealing with at the time. Then he died before he changed it back. Then Nathan inherited it. That is how the paperwork sits. Dorothy sat down again. Her legs would not hold her up. Joe, I know. Wesley Reeves is not coming to that hearing. Wesley Reeves is coming to that hearing. He is going to be there Wednesday morning. Why does he even want Lily? He does not want Lily. He wants what would come with Lily. If he is her legal guardian, he controls the insurance money Nathan left her. He controls the savings account. He controls the house, if he can get it declared part of Nathan's estate. He is a monster. He is a man who saw a headline about a dead soldier and did some math. Dorothy did not sleep that night. On Tuesday, Elias came to the house. He looked as tired as Dorothy felt. He set his briefcase on the kitchen table and did not open it for a long moment. Mrs. Reeves, he said, I have to be honest. This has become significantly more complicated. Tell me. Wesley Reeves is not a strong claimant on the child. He has never met her. He's not related to her in any way. Any judge is going to see through his interest in her guardianship. That part is not the problem. What is the problem? The problem is that even if you get Lily, Wesley may still be able to get the house, and the insurance, and the savings account, which means you would be raising this child with almost nothing. This is a small community. Legal battles like this can go on for years. I have to prepare you for that. I have my social security. I have Cliff's pension. It is small, but it is something. It is not a lot to raise a child on, Mrs. Reeves. I raised Nathan on less. Elias looked at her. He nodded once, slowly. All right, he said. Then let us go to court. The hearing was in the county family court building. It was a low brick building with linoleum floors and fluorescent lights that hummed. Dorothy wore the same black dress she had worn to the funeral. Joe drove her. Scout rode in the back, in the harness Elias had insisted on to make things look proper. Elias met them at the door with 2 folders under his arm. Judge Preston Hallgren, he said in a low voice. 22 years on the bench. Fair. Slow to be moved. But he has 3 grandchildren, and he is soft on animals. Is he soft enough? We are going to find out. Judge Hallgren was a tall man with white hair and heavy hands. He nodded at everyone as he came in, sat down, and read the docket without expression. Then he looked up. This is a lot for a Wednesday morning, he said. Let us begin. Constance testified first. She sat in the witness box with her back very straight and her hands folded in her lap and answered every question in the same flat, clipped voice. She confirmed the guardianship arrangement. She confirmed that she had signed papers to place Lily with the state. She confirmed that she had known Dorothy Reeves for exactly 1 afternoon. The lawyer for Wesley Reeves stood up. He was a young man with an aggressively pressed suit and hair that had been styled that morning. "Miss Hartwell," he said, "would you say Mrs. Reeves is a stranger to the child?" "Yes." "Would you say that placing a 7-year-old girl in the home of a woman she met for the first time last week would be reckless?" Constance hesitated. Then she said, "That is not how I would put it." The young lawyer blinked. "Would you say," he continued more slowly, "that this child, Lillian Hartwell, deserves the guidance of a family member who actually shares her bloodline?" Constance did not answer for a moment. She looked at the young lawyer. She looked at Wesley Reeves, sitting at the plaintiff's table in a bad suit with the tie already loosened. She looked at Dorothy. Then she said, "No, I would not say that." The young lawyer stared at her. "I'm sorry, I would not say that. I do not know Mr. Wesley Reeves. I do not know his character. I do not know his home. I do not know what he wants that child for. I have some suspicions, and they are not flattering." "Miss Hartwell?" "Sit down, young man. I am not finished." The young lawyer sat down. He looked stunned. Wesley Reeves shifted in his chair. Constance took a breath. She looked down at her folded hands. When she looked back up, her voice was different. Not softer exactly, but different. "I have been thinking a great deal since Mrs. Reeves came to my apartment last week," she said. "I have not slept well. I have looked at my niece, at Lily, sitting on my couch after school every day, watching the television with the sound turned very low because she has learned that I do not like the sound turned up. I've watched her drink her juice out of a paper cup because I do not like her using the good glasses. I have listened to her ask, every night before she goes to bed, if her mama can hear her from heaven. And I have not been the person she needed. I have not been the person Emily would have wanted for her. I have not been the person Nathan Reeves would have wanted for her either." The courtroom was silent. Dorothy realized she was holding her breath. "My sister, Emily's mother, died young," Constance said, "and I raised Emily. I raised her the way I was raised, which was strict, which was cold, which was not warm. I did not know how to be warm. My sister had been the warm one in our family, and when she was gone, there was no warm one left." She looked directly at Dorothy. "Emily grew up warm anyway, God knows how, and she raised Lily warm. But when Emily was gone too, I fell back into the only person I know how to be, which is cold. And Lily has been living with that cold for 2.5 years, and she does not deserve it." The judge, Preston Holgren, was watching Constance with an expression Dorothy could not read. "Miss Hartwell," the judge said gently, "are you retracting your consent to state placement?" "I am retracting my consent," Constance said. "I am also, for the record, retracting any objection I have on paper to Mrs. Reeves's petition for guardianship. I have watched that dog on the couch with my niece for the last 5 days. Mrs. Reeves left him with us over the weekend on a temporary basis so that Lily would have him near her. Lily has smiled more in the last 5 days than in the last 5 months. That is the truth of it." The judge nodded slowly. Wesley Reeves's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, this does not affect my client's petition. My client is Nathan Reeves's blood." "Sit down," Judge Holgren said mildly. "Please." The lawyer sat. The judge turned to Dorothy. "Mrs. Reeves, would you please come to the stand?" Dorothy stood up. Her knees were shaking. She walked to the witness box. She sat down. She was sworn in. She looked at Elias, who nodded at her, and then at Joe in the back row, who nodded too, and then at the judge, who was watching her with steady, careful eyes. Elias walked her through everything: the letters, the photographs, the unfinished adoption paperwork, the savings account, the insurance policy, Emily's note in the back of the Bible, Nathan's plan for a Sunday dinner in September. She had brought all of it. Elias placed each piece of evidence into the record. Dorothy answered each question in a steady voice, and when she thought she might cry, she stopped, took a breath, and continued. When Elias sat down, Wesley Reeves's lawyer stood up. "Mrs. Reeves," he said, "you had never even heard of this child until 8 days ago, is that correct?" "That is correct." "You have no legal relationship to her whatsoever?" "I do not." "You have no biological connection to her?" "None." "You are, in fact, an elderly widow living on a fixed income in a house that is not even legally yours, is that correct?" Dorothy paused. She looked at the young lawyer. She looked at Wesley Reeves. She looked at the judge. "That is correct," she said quietly. "I am an elderly widow. I live on a fixed income. I am not sure whose house I'm living in this week, and my only son is dead. But I made him a promise 40 years ago when I brought him home from the hospital. I promised him I would take care of what he loved, and that little girl was what he loved. So here I am." The young lawyer opened his mouth. He closed it. He sat down. Judge Hallgren cleared his throat. "I want to see the dog," he said. Elias stood up. "Your Honor, you wrote in your petition that the dog is significant. I want to see the dog. Bring him in." Joe brought Scout in on the leash. Scout, who had been waiting patiently in the hallway with a bailiff, walked into the courtroom without pulling. He looked around. He saw Dorothy. He looked at her. Dorothy gave a small nod. "Bring the child in as well," the judge said. "Miss Hartwell, would you go get her, please?" Constance rose and left. She returned a minute later with Lily, in the same pink shirt with the stuffed rabbit under one arm. Lily walked to the aisle between the tables. She saw Scout at the other end of the aisle. Scout saw her. The rabbit hit the floor. Lily crossed the courtroom at a run, her small sneakers making sharp, quick sounds against the linoleum. Scout met her halfway, his tail beating against the wooden railing, his whole body pressing into hers as she dropped to her knees and buried her face in the fur of his neck. Nobody in the room said anything. Judge Hallgren watched them for a long moment. He was not smiling. He was not smiling. He was watching the way a man watches a thing he is thinking hard about. "Little one," he said finally, gently, "come here. Bring your dog." Lily stood up. She wiped her nose on the back of her hand. She walked toward the bench with Scout at her side, and Scout matched her stride perfectly, as if they had been walking together their whole lives. At the front of the room, Lily stopped and looked up at the judge in his black robe. She did not look afraid. "What is your name, honey?" the judge said. "Lily." "Just Lily?" Lily thought about it. "Lillian Emily Hartwell. But my mama called me Lil." "Lil, then," the judge said. "How old are you, Lil?" "I'm 7 1/4. That is a fine age. Do you know why we're all here today? Because you are going to decide where I live." "That is right. May I ask you a question about that?" Lily nodded. "Where would you like to live?" Lily's hand tightened in the fur at the back of Scout's neck. She looked at Dorothy. She looked at Constance, standing at the back of the room with her hands folded in front of her. She looked at Wesley Reeves and did not know who he was, so her eyes moved past him. She looked at the judge. "I would like to live with Nathan's mama," she said, "and with Scout, in the house where Nathan grew up, because that is where he was going to take us." The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Lil. You may go and sit down." Lily walked back to Dorothy and sat down in the chair beside her without asking. Scout lay down at their feet. Nobody moved him. Judge Hallgren looked at his notes. He looked at Wesley Reeves. He looked at Wesley Reeves's lawyer. "Mr. Reeves," he said, "I am going to ask you one question. Please answer it honestly, because I will find out if you do not. Have you, at any point in the last 5 years, made any effort to contact this child?" Wesley Reeves shifted in his chair. He did not answer. "Have you," the judge continued, "at any point in the last 5 years, made any effort to contact your half-brother, Nathan Reeves, other than one meeting for coffee that Nathan initiated?" Silence. "Have you," the judge said more slowly, at any point provided any financial support, emotional support or physical presence to this child or to your half-brother's household ever? Your Honor, the young lawyer said, we are not obligated to sit down. The lawyer sat down. Wesley Reeves did not answer. The judge nodded once, as if he had received the answer he expected. He set his pen down. I am going to rule from the bench, he said. This is not a case I need to take under advisement. Dorothy closed her eyes. I find, the judge said, that Mr. Wesley Reeves has no compelling interest in the guardianship of this child that outweighs the interests of the child herself. His petition is denied. He may pursue any claim he wishes to make on his half-brother's estate through the appropriate probate court, and I wish him the joy of it. As for this child, I find that a legal guardianship should be established in favor of Mrs. Dorothy Reeves, effective immediately, pending completion of a home study, which I have every confidence Mrs. Reeves will pass. I further find that the funds Nathan Reeves designated for this child's care, the savings account, the life insurance policy, and any pension or benefits due, are to be preserved for her use exclusively in a trust to be administered by Mr. Elias Marsh in his capacity as counsel. As for the house on Caldwell Street, I'm going to note for the record that a probate proceeding on that property will need to occur, but I strongly encourage Mr. Wesley Reeves and his counsel to consider very carefully whether they would like to pursue a case in which a judge who has already ruled against them once will be reading the file. He set the gavel down before he even used it. We are adjourned. Dorothy did not remember standing up. She did not remember Elias hugging her. She did not remember Joe crossing the courtroom, or Constance walking slowly toward her, or Lily standing beside her chair, with Scout leaning against her leg. She remembered later only the moment when Constance stopped in front of her and said, in a voice so quiet it was barely a voice at all, I am sorry for all of it. I did not know how to be better. I'm going to try to be better from here on out. May I come and see her sometimes? And Dorothy remembered saying, yes, you may come and see her. She is going to want that. And she remembered Constance nodding and then walking out of the courtroom alone and standing on the courthouse steps with the wooden crucifix pressed against her lips for a very long time before she got in her car and drove away. They drove back to Caldwell Street that afternoon. Lily rode in the back seat with Scout. Lily had her small hand in Scout's fur the entire way. When they pulled into the driveway of the small yellow house with the slouching front porch and the screen door that Nathan had promised to fix, Lily sat very still for a long moment. This is it, she said. This is it, Dorothy said. Nathan used to draw pictures of it on napkins when he came to see us. Did he? He said the porch had a swing. Dorothy looked at the porch. The old swing had been taken down years ago. One of the chains rusted through. She had never gotten around to putting it back up. We will put it back up, she said. This weekend, I promise. Lily nodded. They went inside. Scout led the way, as he always did now. Lily walked slowly through each room, touching nothing, looking at everything. In the kitchen, she stopped in front of the yellow tablecloth and put her hand on it. My mama had one just like this, she said. Did she? Yes. Dorothy sat down at the table. Lily sat down across from her. Scout lay down between them. Dorothy poured a glass of milk for Lily. She poured a cup of coffee for herself. Lil, she said, there is something I need to show you whenever you are ready. Okay. Dorothy stood up. She walked to the cabinet where she had put the wooden box. She took it out and set it on the table. She opened it. She took out the photograph. Nathan and Emily and Lily and the puppy on the porch, and slid it across the table. Lily looked at it for a long time. Her small face did not move. That is my mama, she said finally. That is your mama. And Nathan. And Nathan. And me. And you. And Scout when he was little. And Scout when he was little. Lily picked up the photograph very carefully, holding it by the edges the way Dorothy had shown her, without meaning to teach anyone anything. She held it up to her face. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she set it back down on the table. "May I keep it?" she said. "You may keep it. It is yours. May I have a frame for it, so it does not get bent? We will get you a frame tomorrow, whatever kind you want." Lily nodded. She looked at Scout under the table. Scout looked up at her. "Nathan's mama," she said. "Yes, honey. May I call you something?" Dorothy's throat closed. She waited a moment. Then she said as steadily as she could, "You may call me whatever you like, sweetheart." Lily thought about it very carefully. She was a serious child. She had always been a serious child. She was going to be a serious child for a long time. "May I call you Grandma?" she said. Dorothy could not speak for a moment. She nodded because she could not speak. Then she reached across the table and took the little girl's hand in both of hers, and she held it, and Lily let her, and Scout, under the table, thumped his tail slowly and steadily against the floor, as if he had been waiting for exactly this. The weeks that followed were not easy. There were adjustments. Lily had trouble sleeping the first few nights, and Dorothy sat up in the hallway outside her bedroom door until Lily's breathing evened out. There were forms to fill out for the school in town, and a home study by a woman from social services who spent an hour walking through the house and taking notes, and a phone call with a grief counselor about how to help a small girl who had lost two mothers and was learning to trust a third. There were nightmares. There were quiet mornings when Lily did not want to talk. There were slow afternoons when Lily wanted to talk about Emily for hours, and Dorothy listened, and Scout lay across their feet and listened too. Wesley Reeves went home to Charlotte. He filed one probate motion. Elias handled it. The house was declared quietly and firmly part of Nathan's estate, but the estate itself was found to have designated beneficiaries. Lily received her trust. Dorothy received an occupancy right for as long as she lived. Wesley Reeves received the small satisfaction of not being publicly named as a man who had tried to take an orphan's inheritance, and he apparently decided to be content with that because Dorothy never heard from him again. Constance came for Sunday dinners. The first one was awkward. The second was less awkward. By the sixth, Constance had learned to laugh at Scout's habit of stealing pieces of biscuit off the corner of the table, and Lily had begun, tentatively, to sit next to her aunt on the couch after supper. Joe put the porch swing back up on a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks after the hearing. Lily helped him, holding the bolts and the washers in a small tin cup. Scout supervised. When it was finished, Lily sat on the swing and pushed off with her small feet and swung slowly back and forth, and Dorothy sat in the wicker chair across from her and watched, and she thought that she had not been that peaceful in a very long time. 2 months after the hearing, on a Saturday morning in late September, Dorothy drove Lily and Scout out to Heron Falls Memorial Cemetery. She had not been back since the funeral. They parked in the same small lot. They walked through the same iron gate. The wind was moving through the same tall grass at the edge of the property. Dorothy had a small bouquet of yellow wildflowers in one hand and Lily's small hand in the other. Scout walked beside them without a leash. He knew where they were going. Nathan's grave was under a young oak tree that had been planted the year Dorothy had graduated from high school. The stone was simple. His name, his dates, his rank, the single word, beloved. Dorothy had picked that word herself because none of the other words had been enough. Scout walked to the stone first. He lay down beside it, on the strip of grass where the sod had grown back thick and green, and he put his chin on his paws. Lily let go of Dorothy's hand. She knelt down in the grass. She reached out and touched the stone. She traced Nathan's name with her fingertip, letter by letter, and Dorothy watched her, and she did not speak. She did not need to. The little girl needed to do this on her own. After a while, Lily sat back on her heels and looked up at the stone. "Hi, Nathan," she said softly. "I brought Scout, and I brought Grandma. We came together." She was quiet for a moment. "Your grandma is nice. I like her. She lets Scout sleep on my bed. I know you said he does not get on the bed, but Grandma says for now it is okay. She fixed the porch swing. She said you were going to, but you did not get to. So she did." Dorothy pressed her hand to her mouth. "Mama would like her," Lily said. "I think Mama would like her a lot." She reached out again and put her small hand flat against the stone. "Thank you for choosing us," she said. Then she stood up and turned around and walked into Dorothy's arms, and Dorothy held her, and Scout stayed by the stone with his chin on his paws for a long moment, quiet and still, the way he had been on the casket, the way he had been the first day of everything. After a while, Scout got up. He walked over to Dorothy and Lily and pressed himself against the backs of their legs, and the three of them stood there together in the shade of the young oak tree with the wind moving through the tall grass, and Dorothy understood, in a way she had not understood on the day of the funeral, why Scout had done what he had done. He had not been saying goodbye, he had been keeping a promise. He had known there was a little girl, somewhere, that his person had loved. He had known that little girl needed him, and he had known, in the deep and wordless way that dogs know these things, that the only way to get to her was through the woman standing at the edge of the crowd, holding a folded flag. He had made the connection so that she would have to see it. He had climbed up on the casket because it was the only way to keep his promise to a man who could not keep his own. Dorothy looked down at him. Scout looked up at her. His tail thumped once softly against her leg. She reached down and put her hand on the top of his head. "You did good," she said quietly. "You did so good." Then she took Lily's hand, and Lily took Scout's collar, and the three of them walked slowly back across the grass toward the iron gate, and the sunlight caught in Lily's hair, and Scout's tail moved in easy sweeps, and Dorothy carried for the first time in weeks no folded flag in her arms, because everything Nathan had asked her to carry, she was already carrying, and it was not a burden. It was a family. At the gate, Lily stopped and looked back. "Grandma?" she said. "Yes, sweetheart." "Will we come back? Every Sunday if you want to." "I want to." "Then we will." Lily nodded. She was satisfied. She turned around and kept walking. Behind them, the wind moved through the tall grass, and the young oak tree bent slightly, and the shadow of it moved across the stone that read, "Beloved." And somewhere in the distance a mourning dove was calling, and the world went on the way the world does, slowly, steadily, and full of small mercies that only look small until you are the one they save. If this story reached something in you today, take a moment to leave a comment about the person in your life who taught you what loyalty looks like. Hit that like button so more people find their way to stories like this one, and subscribe to the channel so you can be here for the next one, because there are more of these coming, and I would love for you to hear them with us.